Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by PILLMA. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And this week, we've got a very, very special guest, somebody dear to me, somebody that's was my secret weapon when I was growing my law firm, Cheryl Leone. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. It's hard to believe it's been 50 years of working, though.
Yeah, I know. So Cheryl was my law firm administrator, CEO, whatever you want to call it, back when I was, trying to figure out how to grow a law firm. And I was really into marketing, but I really wasn't into management and processes and procedures. And thank God that I met her, because I probably would have never pulled it off without her. So thank you for that, Cheryl.
Anytime. You helped me grow too. There isn't any doubt about that. Yeah.
So tell a little bit about your background and how we came to meet, and in a little town called Dunn with like 10,000 people in it.
Isn't that the truth? I think that if there's anything interesting about your law firm was that you were in such a small town. And by all rights, you should have not been able to do what you did. I graduated a little over 50 years ago at 17. Wanted to be a foreign correspondent, and I ended up working for a judge, and I never left law after that. But the one thing is I worked every position in a law firm at some point, whether it was a file clerk to secretary to paralegal, and I got into management. And that's when I suddenly realized that there was a great deal of learning that lawyers had to do because they didn't think business. They didn't realize, my favorite saying, I always laugh, is what part of for profit don't you understand? But Right. They would struggle and not really go just so far, and then they would fail, or they would end up where they are. You and I got together. I had to sit down and think a little bit about you and I getting together. But I do remember coming to Dunn, and we sat down and talked, and I asked you what you wanted. And there was no doubt in my mind that while you wanted to be a lawyer and you wanted a law firm, you really wanted to have a multimillion-dollar law firm that you could sell out and go do marketing, because that's what you love to do. And, of course, that's where PILMMA ultimately came in. Right. Like you said, I think the one thing that I would tell you would probably agree with, Ken, is that lawyers don't like change. But you and I both know out of change comes growth. And that's what probably you struggled with the most, because you really jumped into it and said, I've got to change to get where I'm wanting to go. I mean, I would assume you would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember having that conversations, when I decided I wanted to go out and start marketing, and my old law partners that want to do it. And I said, right. we got to pivot. We got to change. I said, we're going to get left behind. I said, because these guys on TV are killing us.
Sure. Yeah. Not to interrupt, but you are right. You actually bucked a big trend, because at that time, back when, I guess is the easiest way to say it, lawyers weren't thinking like that. And I think you spotted it before anybody else did.
Well, I don't know if I spotted it before everybody else, but I was one of in a small town, country law firm, it was a big leap, because,
well,
they thought it was unprofessional.
That's right. That's exactly right. And you actually had a hard time, I remember, with that too, until you finally decided, in my opinion, that if you wanted to get where you wanted to go, you were going to have to do it. Yeah. And I think that's where most lawyers get stopped is, we did, and I don't know if you can remember this or not, but we spent the first 2 years, I think 98 to 2000, I think, doing nothing but assessing the law firm. I was sitting back thinking about how we did it. And what we did is we sat down and broke the firm down into staff and how do we manage that, lawyers and staff, technology, marketing. And of course, the big thing is, where do you get the money? How do you do it? And we had to actually come up with a way to handle cases that, I guess gave it a better return on investment. In other words, they couldn't just lay on a desk. So we started looking at everything from a business viewpoint. And I think that was a big change for you. I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. I mean, when you came in, I didn't even have a case management system. I was using
Yep.
paper files, and I think we went to a Word document. I mean, not Word documents, but the file folders
Hmm.
in Microsoft or whatever. And then we got our first case management system was Needles, if I remember. No, TrialWorks to start with.
TrialWorks was first, and then Needles. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it was like, but see, the thing I remember most is that, I went out and borrowed $500,000 and went on TV and went from signing 20 cases up to over 100 cases a month. And I didn't have the infrastructure. I mean, and that's when I was really needing somebody like you, because I just couldn't handle it. I mean,
Well, I think that's a good lesson. If I had to, things that I love to teach lawyers to have these aha moments is what you said. You realized that for you to be able to take that $500,000 and turn it into something, you were going to have to internally have support. And at that point, you didn't have. You were a small firm. And the question is, in Dunn, North Carolina, what can you do in a small town? I think you broke all the rules. And it was probably, I know that you don't believe me sometimes, but you were probably the only attorney that I can point to that says he got it. And I think it became because change, like I was remembering with your staff, we started looking at staff first and realized that you were overstaffed and underutilized. I can remember that as clear as a bell, where they were, you had a thought philosophy, well, they work for me. They're just like family. And it was a hard thing for you to accept that they could be like family, but you were a business and they had to deliver. And that was very hard for you. I can remember that.
It was. I mean, I hated her. I mean, I got over it, but I hated firing people and I hated jumping on people's butt and stuff like that. I wanted everybody to like me. That was my problem.
And I think once you broke that mold, that was a significant growth in the firm, because we were able to come in and develop forms, how we wanted case flow. I can remember talking about case flow with you. What was our goal? Well, obviously, it was to be a firm that cared about the client, and that was really important to you. And it taught me a big lesson that I've always used with Catalyst, is without clients who like you and will go tell other people how good a job you did, you're not going to go anywhere. You can spend all the money in the world. So you made it just a policy in your firm. We're going to get along with our clients and do over deliver. And we had some people that just couldn't buy in. And I think it's important your staff buys in. If they don't, I think they'll kill you.
Yeah. I remember you were real big on this, preaching about, we'd never talk bad about our clients, even in front of other staff. You can go to Cheryl or go to Ken, but don't be talking. I think you used to say, but for the grace of God, go I.
That's right. And, when you come to staff, and we can talk more about staff, because I saw staff as a big learning curve with you till you started putting into play things that I would say, well, Ken, we've got to do this. I can remember we wrote job descriptions for everybody. And once we started doing that, we realized that we had people that weren't even close to doing what we thought they should do or were doing. What did I tell you? That you were sitting on a gold mine and didn't know it.
Yep.
And I can remember having developing these lunch and learn that on Friday we would make people sit down so we could teach them, because a knowledgeable staff person will save you 9 times out of 10.
Yep. I think it was called H&L University.
That's exactly right. I forgot about that. Darn if it wouldn't. That's exactly right. H&L University. But I think the thing everybody asks me, as I'm sure they ask you, is how did you do it? And I think there again, I keep coming back to you were willing to change. And I think I would tell any lawyer, and I do, is that you got to tell me what you want. And you did. You were real clear. Then the next question is it feasible? Well, of course it is. But you've got to do it. And I think this is where I say you bought in that most people don't. Are you willing to give the time and the energy and, of course, have the money? But if you aren't willing to sacrifice time and energy, don't even try it, because you're just going to wear yourself out. And that is one thing else. You're probably the hardest working lawyer I've ever seen in my life, to be honest with you. But and I think that you were also willing to admit your weaknesses. I was always impressed that you didn't even profess to be knowledgeable about management. You wanted to learn. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I finally got somebody that sat there saying, teach me management.
Yeah. Yeah, and you did. You and Dave, who's not with us on this podcast, but and you can talk about Dave if you want to and tell him how that came about. But I thought that was also another
Well, sure, because I'm
good
sorry.
deal for me.
Well, one of the things I remember there again is I've been about 2 years when I had run into Dave. I think he was doing the Y2K compliance for Blue Cross. He was a retired IBMer. And I had asked him, we were struggling with technology. And I remember that. And I thought, well, I'll go ask Dave, this guy named Dave Favor, because my God, he's with IBM. Well, what I didn't realize was that he was with management, not down the floor. But, I said, would you come in and look at this law firm? And he said, sure. And I said, well, how much would you charge us? He said, well, how much are you willing to pay? And I said, how's $35 an hour sound? And he never blinked an eye. I mean, my God, the guy was making 5 times that. But he came in, and I remember he looked at the financials, looked at that, and taught us, and I give it strictly to Dave, taught us the value of strategic planning.
Yep.
I think until we hit that, we were just sort of going by the seat of our pants saying, wow, this is working, this is working. And that's where I think you helped me, is because we could try out these things that we couldn't try before. And you've got to be willing as a lawyer owner to do that, to understand that not everything's going to come easy.
No.
You got to be willing to change.
Another thing that I'll never forget about Dave Favor, and I tell this story a lot of times when I'm speaking about core values, because when you came, I didn't have any core values. I mean, we did, but I didn't have them written out. I mean, everybody's got core values. It's whether or not you state them out and everything. And I remember he said, do you think Hitler had core values? I said, hell no. I said, he was a cruel dictator. He said, no. He said, what he believed in was non-negotiable. It might be terrible, but it was his core values. It don't mean it was great core values. It just means it was his core values. And that stuck with me, I guess now going on 30 plus years. It's that core values are non-negotiable. And just because you might not think it's a good one, that doesn't mean that it's not their core value. But that struck with me. I don't know. It's just something I'll never forget.
Well, and I think with Dave along came with that is determining that you had to understand that if you hire people who don't have the same values that you do, you will be constantly like the squirrel in the cage circling, because they won't understand where you're coming from. And it's sort of like, if your belief, and I thought this was interesting in your firm, if your belief was that you treat all clients, no matter what they are, with the very best that you can, and you got somebody else who will sit back there and say, well, I don't particularly like clients, but I'll do my job, they're going to kill you. They're just there. And so one of the things we implemented was getting you to write down what you thought were your core values. And I don't know if you can remember, we must have worked that list to death.
Yep.
And I can remember old Dave saying, why don't you write out what that means? And even I would have to sit down and say, okay, what did I mean by treat people right? What does that mean?
Yep.
And I think that once a lawyer comes in and says, I'm going to be a values-based management company, everything sort of with staff starts to fly, because you start critiquing people, and you've got, say, a lawyer, one of your associates comes in late, leaves early, and you're a work ethic lawyer, you're not going to get along. He isn't going to last, or you aren't going to last, one of the two.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah. But the other thing I think Dave really got us going on and was allowed us to take it is, was the technology, because I think there again, we didn't have any technology plan. You tended to buy. I always hated to see you go to Office Depot, because I knew you were going to come back with something we didn't need, but it got you intrigued somewhere. But once we got beyond that hump, we realized that we needed a good case management system, and you didn't need bells and whistles. And I think you do good at that, of not feeling like you got to hire something or buy something, that has bells and whistles. You wanted a good case management system that your staff could operate. And I think lawyers make a bad decision when they bring in a case management system that looks great on the face of it, but your secretary or your paralegal or your legal assistant can't run it easily. You're trying to teach them and they can't handle the case management system, because I do believe a law firm lives and breathes on reports and forms and accountability.
Yeah. Something else I remember that was and this is good for people to listen to this, I want everybody to like me. So when I came in and trusted you to run the law firm as far as manage the staff, I've kind of tried to manage the lawyers, but you would get on them about something or hold them accountable, and then they didn't like it, and they come back door and come to me. And I remember you coming in, it's closing the door. I don't know if you slammed it or not, but you said, hey, you gonna let me run this firm, or you gonna, this staff? He said they're backdooring me, and I can't get anything. I can't get anything accomplished because of you. And I said, you're right.
Yeah, I remember that.
So when they came in, I said, I had a hell of a meeting. I said, listen, unless it's a problem with Cheryl, don't come to me. Just go to her. And if it's a problem with her, then we'll make an appointment. And then you and her will sit down and we'll figure it out.
It sure cut down the interruptions.
Yeah, it cut out the interruptions. And I had to send 2 or 3 back to start with because they didn't believe me. I also remember this, Cheryl, and I don't know if you remember this. I was still practicing law, and I just, you would get on me about not, giving kudos or encouragement or praise to people when they did a good job. And I told you, I said, listen, I'm paying them a good wage, and that's what I expect. And you said, you don't understand management. I said, evidently not. And so Cheryl went out and got me these stamps that said like super job, A++, or, whatever, and put it on my desk. So when I was reviewing, like, people drafted complaints, demands, different things, I would stamp it on it and send it back,
That's right.
to get me in the mode of praising people. But I'd always been that type of person. I didn't need it. I understand it now. I was young back then. People need that. I ain't gonna say encouragement, but affirmation.
Yeah,
I didn't never need it that much, and so I didn't realize other people need it. Now, listen, I don't like to turn it down, but I just didn't need it. But some people, they'd rather have that than the money.
Well, I started to tell you that is the one thing I found as I worked with other law firms and did a lot of working with their staff, and that was actually as important, if not just as important as money. I mean, I think one of the things that lawyers forget, I don't think I've ever walked into a law firm yet, including yours, that I didn't say, tell me who's the one person you can't get along without. And there'll always be one person that has that 100% loyalty to you. The rest will tell you they do, but they'll leave you for another $1 an hour. Right. So you've got to make them want to stay with you. And there again, I don't necessarily think it's money. I think it's how you treat them. Like you said, I can remember those stamps and the change in attitude in the staff. I can remember that. And that was a big deal. They'd run around showing people. Yeah,
because that was a big deal to get a kudos from Ken because he never gives them.
That's exactly right. And I think that was probably there. I think the other thing, and I think we ought to talk about this a little bit, is the inability to let somebody go. You had a terrible time with that. I remember that clear there. I've always said you're slow to hire and you got to be quick to fire. Why keep somebody on that during the first 60 days is not going to do a good job?
I know. I'm over that, by the way, now. I have no problem. But I did. I mean, it's part of growing, but I did. I had a terrible job. I just, I don't know if it's because of me coming up very poor and I know what happens when somebody gets laid off a job, what happens to the family. I don't know. I don't know if what it was, but it was hard.
Well, I think that what you don't count into, and I see this in firms, is that if you're fair, that's what your staff want. And they don't want you to treat one person differently than the other person. In other words, everybody's sort of on a level playing field. Right. So it's not a matter of you worry about what goes on in their life. One of the things I always, when I give a speech or talk to the lawyers is, if when you come in the morning and you say good morning, and a staff person tells you everything that went on in their life the night before, husband got drunk and the kids were screaming, whatever, you're too close to that staff person. That is not a positive staff management.
Yeah. Well, I think you say you can be friendly, but you can't be their friends.
That's exactly right. And
because you might have to fire them one day, you got to hold them accountable, and it's harder to do it when it's your friend.
Oh, I think so too. I would hope even you would say that gosh, as much as we've gone through, the truth of the matter is I always understood you were the boss. And that's what you got to teach the staff is that, who gets to run the firm, who gets to do it, because you do want them to have a buy-in. And I think they get a buy-in when they see you be fair and they see you. I think the other thing is investing. When I was thinking back, I was thinking of the one lawyer we had that went to law school and worked for us for, I forget how many years before she got her law license. Well, you paid for one course a semester for her.
Yeah.
So that's an investment. You had her for, I forget how many years, for that. And I think you were good at investing in your staff. I really do. And I don't think sometimes that lawyers understand you get it back tenfold. You want a positive staff, and the way you get positive staff is to take care of them to that extent. Does that make sense?
This episode of Grow Your Law Firm is brought to you by PILMMA, the Personal Injury Lawyers Marketing and Management Association. We grow law firms. To find out more about how we can help you grow your law firm to the next level, go to PILMMA, PILMMA.org. Yeah. And I remember I used to, this is before anybody knew what a ghost call was. I would disguise my voice and call the office.
Yeah.
And see if the receptionist, how many rings it was, and how they answered the phone because we had a certain way. And then also, I'd act like I was a potential new client, see how they handled the call. I mean, they couldn't record it because I didn't have anything to record it with, but I just wanted to see how people handled it. So, I mean, this was stuff I was doing in 98. I mean, 98.
Before it was even popular, yeah.
Yeah. And then this is another thing I remember is talking about core values. I don't know if you remember, we had a girl that was really like, as far as productivity was like a machine, but she was just terrible with clients. McClam girl, I can't remember.
Yeah, I know who you are. Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I'll pay for you to go to this Dale Carnegie course, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I'll pay for it. I said, but you got to learn how to be better with the clients. I said, we're going to have to dismiss you. And she let us dismiss her. I mean,
that's right.
She won't change.
Yeah, that's right. I do remember that. Not to leap around a different subject, but the other thing I remember, just because you mentioned her, was you were so generous with everything that you had. And you sit on intellectual property. We design case flows and forms and that to this day, are valuable, but to not give away the shop all the time. And I remember when you let the one individual go, she started printing out all of our forms and procedures. I went, hey, and you were saying, well, what does it? I said, it makes a lot of difference. Why are you helping your competition?
Yeah.
Staff is such the basics of it. What is it we used to say? Would you talk to your grandmother like that?
Yeah.
And you got to hold your feet to the fire. You cannot let one person be different than everybody else. And you've got to let people that walk in that firm, know that they're valued. I think that's where it was Betty Lynn's greatest strength. She could make anybody feel entirely welcome in your firm. And that was important to them.
I actually talked to her. This is our receptionist, who was like one of the best receptionists I ever had. And I think she finally retired, but she still texts me, and asks me questions and stuff. And she lets me know when she's coming to the beach. So yeah, I mean, but she was with me a long, long time.
Well, that brings up what we've always said is you hire the best of the best, and you got to take your time hiring. And you can't hire just because you think they sound good. I mean, they've got to walk the walk and talk the talk, and it's more than just calling them in for one conference. When I interviewed for you, I would ask for 3 references. 2 were business and 1 was a member of their family. Because I'll tell you, if anybody will tell you the truth about their kid, it's going to be mama, in a heartbeat. And but it was an effective way of figuring out who are you going to plug in here and what are they going to do. And that brings up job descriptions. I forget how many job descriptions we've drafted, where people literally know this is what we expect of you.
Yeah, I know you used to think one of the things, I don't know if it was you or Dave or the combination, but I think I still say this, I still talk about this at events. let people know, when you hire somebody, let them know your expectations, find out what their expectations are, and give them really good equipment. Give them fast computers, give them comfortable chairs, and then give them feedback, either good or bad. They need to know where they stand, right? Everybody, if they're doing great, let them know. If they're not doing great, let them know.
And I think that in fairness to a staff person, you're refusing to tell them where they're not doing well is not fair to them, because people want to succeed. That's something I preach. Why would you not help somebody succeed? And that goes especially for staff. You've had some good staff. You've also had some bad staff.
Oh, yeah.
We tended to move quickly to try to get them out. It's that simple. I think hiring with associate lawyers is a little bit difficult, because you can talk to people all you want about what did they do, how did they do in that, but in the end, it's a gut reaction. Are they going to fit my values? Are they going to fit my, I think a lot of lawyers have meetings. They go nowhere. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I'm honest to God, you can meeting something to death. I remember Dave locking you out of a meeting one time. Can you remember that? We had a stakeholders meeting, and for those of you listening, a stakeholder, you may only have 2 or 3 or 5, but they're going to be people that are invested in your success. We call them stakeholders. And we would meet, once a week, if I remember correctly, in the conference room. And Dave would run the meeting because he's a project manager and he knew what he was doing. So we came in for our very first meeting. It was going to be at 1:00. And at 1:00, Dave stood up, walked over and locked the door. And Ken wasn't there. I said, "What are you doing?" Ken's not here. He said, "The meeting starts at 1:00, no matter who you are." Pretty soon we heard Ken knock on the door, and we never had a meeting not start on time. But you can meet people to death. You've got to decide, is the meeting worthwhile, and will it help me grow?
Yeah, I think if you don't have an agenda, you don't need a meeting. I will say that, and it needs to be, somebody's got to facilitate to keep it moving so you don't go down rabbit holes.
Yeah, I think the other thing is you got to trust people to do their job. Don't you think so? I mean, you trust
but verify.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I agree with that. But if you're going to second guess people, and I was always amazed you never did that with me to the extent that I felt hemmed in. But we could sit down and have some pretty honest conversations about where we're going. And I remember when I finally told you, I said, "Ken, what do you want? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want?" And in the end, it was never about just owning a successful law firm. I can still remember the day you told me that you wanted a law firm you could sell out and go retire on the beach. Well, let me see. What are you doing now? Sort of started another company and you're living on the beach. Yeah. I think you can do anything you want if you try hard enough.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, that's, you just got to have grit. You ain't got to be the smartest, because I proved that, but you got to have grit. You got to have, you got to have perseverance, and I think you got to be humble enough to surround yourself with people that strengths.
Absolutely, I think that
your weak, covers your weaknesses. And that's where I think I was actually the smartest part of. I was humble enough that I brought in people smarter than me, and that's okay, because it was still the bottom line. I still had to file a say-so, but you don't know what you don't know. And so
you never micromanaged. I think that was a strength of yours. I can remember when we were doing strengths and weaknesses. I always thought that a strength of yours was you did not micromanage. In other words, once you figured out somebody knew what they were doing, you were willing to step back and let them do it. I think you did with me. I mean, I don't think there was any doubt about that,
Oh, yeah. But, for sure.
Something else on the technology, and then I want to talk a little bit about your philosophy on marketing, because that is what made the firm. Gosh, I can remember you going to the bank, borrowing money, and I'm sitting there with my heart in my throat thinking, "Oh God, I hope what we've done is going to work, because we're going to be in terrible trouble if it doesn't." Yeah. But we utilized, I thought, technology really smart. We got our act together with staff. That was our first thing. Then surrounded with good technology, forms. I mean, it took us first 2 years just to pull things out of that firm of what worked and what didn't work. I can remember us designing how we wanted a case to flow. To this day, if I walked into a law firm, I would probably have almost identical to what we came up with back in 99 and 2000. This is what you do. And then you make your staff do it, like keeping notes. How many people used to fight us keeping notes? But I'm sure it was your firm where somebody an attorney flew in for a deposition and it had never been scheduled. And the only way we could prove it was we looked at notes, but your staff used to hate making notes, but it saved you time and time again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Marketing, you're such a guru on marketing. I probably shouldn't even bring it up, but I will tell you one thing that I don't think lawyers do, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think they really understand determining your brand and keeping to it. It's like they jump from one thing to the other, and I don't think you can do that. Whatever your brand is going to be, you got to live with it. So
you got to decide. I mean, I just come back from doing a bunch of videos for social media, and one of the things I said, most 80% of lawyers, they waste about 50% of the money on marketing because they never, number one, figure out what their message is going to be, and number two, what their differentiator is.
I agree. Absolutely.
I like to say it like this. You got to answer two questions when somebody picks up the phone and calls you, or any potential client. Is that their first question is, do I need a lawyer? And if I do need a lawyer, why in the hell should I hire you over all these other guys I see on TV, billboards, listen to on radio, on bus? Why you? Why are you over all these other ones?
Yep.
And you got to figure out what that is. And the thing is, lawyer says it's too hard because we all do the same thing. But then I say, well, you remember when I had the 30-day money client satisfaction?
Yep.
That differentiated us. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, anybody could come pick up a file anytime they wanted to. They got quantum merit. And if you ain't had a case for 30 days, how much are you going to get? I mean, how much are they going to pay you? Not that much. So really won't give them anything. But and I remember when we did that, it drove all the other lawyers crazy. And we got 2 or 3 bar complaints, and we were getting results. I said, no, we're just guaranteeing client service.
Yeah, that's funny. I had forgotten about that, but I do remember that. And I thought you were very clear about your marketing goals too. I hate shotgun marketing. I'll tell you one of the things that I always thought you were smart on was you wouldn't take any marketing calls. You'd make them come to me first. Well, it was because everybody's going to try to sell you something, and they will make it sound good. There's no doubt in my mind. But if you can get out of your hands into somebody that can listen to it and say, oh, that's crazy, or that's not in our wheelhouse, or that's not in our part of our plan. I mean, you'll spend your whole life spending money on things that were non-productive. You really do need a marketing plan to an extent. I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is the time of the year to do it. I mean, you might have to change it, because I always, one of my weaknesses is I like to try new shiny objects, and, I have to be careful. But I always was willing to try something new or something nobody else had ever tried. And half the time it didn't work, and half the time it did work. But when it did work, we made a lot of money off of it until everybody caught up. Then when they caught up, we were on to something else.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's exactly right. I think another thing is that people get involved with marketing companies, and please believe me, I think you've had some good marketing companies. But if they don't understand you, why are you paying them any money? And I've seen them try to force lawyers into these little niches that they don't need to belong in.
Yeah.
I think they forget who pays the bills, if that makes sense. But I do think having that in between on the marketing calls helps a lot because, one, it keeps you able to do more marketing that you want. And are you marketing what you really want?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think the other thing is that, your decision to move to Raleigh was huge. I think that was a defining moment with me and with you and where we were. I can remember that to the day because I remember you coming in and telling me, and I'm thinking, oh, my God,
Yeah.
But you were absolutely right. It was one of the few things I never saw that you were right on point with.
Well, we kept hiring these lawyers, and they would come and and they stay about a year or two, and then they leave because there was no social life. I mean,
that's right.
My town was a dry town. They didn't even have a bar. I mean, it was a dry county. It was 10,000 people, no professionals, just a couple of factories. And they would go to Raleigh, Charlotte, or Wilmington. I mean, they'd leave, and you can't blame them. I said, we got to go so that we can keep. We didn't lose that many people after that. I mean, if we lost them, right, we wanted to lose them, not because. You were talking about young lawyers too. One thing I really think was a smart thing that we did was that me going out there and hiring 2 or 3 law clerks, right up, 3 Ls, people that were getting ready to go to 3rd-year law school, and letting them work at each department for about 2 or 3 weeks. and trying to get an idea of did they like disability, did they like workers' comp, did they like piano,
Yep.
and then letting our lawyers see how they melded what their work ethics was, what their core values were, see what we were like. We hired a bunch of lawyers that way, and we trained them our way because I don't know if you remember, but every time I tried to hire somebody that had a lot of experience,
You were terrible.
well, they just they're going to do it their way.
That's right. And you can't blame them. That's what they've done and done successfully. So I think they don't realize what you did early on is that whatever you decided was how your firm was going to run and how it was going to meet its accountability. That was what you wanted. It didn't mean that what they didn't bring to the table wasn't important. Certainly it was. But we ran a certain way and it was successful.
Yeah.
And we sort of wanted them to do it our way. And I think they had a really hard time with that.
Yeah, I mean, you remember I had a lawyer that was really a great lawyer, but didn't call clients back.
That's right. Yeah. And the other thing is to recognize, and I mean, I don't know if you've ever even been able to explain it to me, but you have maybe one owner or two owners of a law firm or however many, but they are the owners. And in the end, they get to do what they want. If you wanted to do it, go out and open your own law firm, but you've got to be willing to understand that if you join a law firm, there's going to be certain accountability. And I think they have a hard time when they come in of understanding that because, they want to be your best friend or your buddy. And I think that keeping that leadership distance is important.
Yeah. I remember one thing. I remember you when you were coaching and teaching the paralegals and stuff, case managers, you'd tell them, your job is to make your lawyer look really good.
That's right.
I'll never forget that. I've never heard that. I've never heard that in any other law firm since then.
Yeah. And that's true. If they can't understand that, and I think maybe that's what I'm trying to say, that's your job. I may disagree with you in private, and we've done that before where I go in and close the door and we would hammer something out. But the truth of the matter is my job was to make you look good. And if I could do that, I won. It was that simple. I think they had a hard time with that.
Yeah.
But, look, I can hire anybody and set them down in front of a case management system, and I'll have them up and running in 48 hours. So don't tell me that your skills are so valuable that I'm looking for that extra something, whether it's loyalty or, like you said, understanding where the firm's going to go. Can you buy into it? I think you're a very hard worker. And I think that was hard for you and me. We would be up there, at night? Or coming in early in the morning and there'd be just you and I working. And you think, well, my God, what don't they see? If I was going to succeed, I'd be trying to work as hard as I could, but that's my personality, and it was yours. Like I said, I think your work ethic probably made you what you are. I'm not sure everybody could do that. And that gets back to what I'm saying. If you're wanting, whoever would be listening to this, if you're wanting to have a multimillion-dollar law firm like you, or you want to at least make over $1 million, you've got to sit down and decide, are you willing to sacrifice what it takes to do that? Because there's a price to pay. Now, once you get it, there's a payoff. I mean, obviously, you're doing what you like to do,
Yeah, yeah. And then once I got out of cases, man, I was
oh my God,
making the most money I ever made in my life. And
isn't that interesting?
Working less.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. But look what it took to get you to that point. I can remember when we talked about, I guess maybe it was when we did the case flow. I was trying to think what we decided to do. That I said, you can be $1 million law firm in under 5 years if we do this. And all I can think about is, God, I hope I'm right. And by God, you did it, I think, in 4 years and 1 month or something. I forget. And during that time, we turned that firm upside down.
Yeah.
I think we changed everything. I think the big thing that was for you, it was also the financial, learning to read the financials, learning to understand the budget. What did it mean? It's nice to say I'm going to do A, B, and C, but can you pay for it that year? And we did a lot of that, budgeting, rather than just sort of spending what we wanted to spend when we spent. Reports were a big deal for you, I think. I think they helped you see what the lawyers were or weren't doing. Yep.
I looked at them. Yeah, I did. I still preach that. I love the way we had things set up where, once a person got released, they had to click a button, then the clock starts running. Then we know we got 45 days to get the medicals in. Then they got to click another button once they get the records in. Then we got to get the demand out. You had like 2 weeks or 10 days.
Yeah.
And you can run all these reports and you can see what the status was and if they were overdue and all this stuff. And this felt like it was I felt like we were way ahead of the time. I mean, that's what everybody does now, but, it's built into but I think we were way ahead of our time back in the 90s and.
So the question becomes now, if I had to walk into a law firm, what would I change or not change? Well, I'm not convinced I would change much of anything. I might redefine it based on technology.
I think AI is going to change everything.
I do too.
It's just going to make things a lot quicker. You're going to be able to get 10 times more work done with the same person.
Yeah, and I think that I know when it came out about AI and that was the first thing I made the leap to is, oh my God, your bottom line will improve.
Yep, it will.
And I know people say, well, I don't want to let anybody go, but I think you recognize that things are going to change, and if you can. Like I do tell you a lesson I learned. If you have somebody leaving, why do you feel like you've got to replace that person right away? Why wouldn't you look at the job and say, can I change it out? Can I create a new position? Could we move these type of cases? And maybe we don't have to hire somebody else, or we hire a different person. It's sort of like hiring somebody to do the filing. Why would you have a $70,000 a year paralegal filing paperwork?
Yeah.
You hire a high school student and let them make some money.
Yeah.
I think you got to constantly look at things like that.
Yeah. So we're getting near the end, Cheryl. Any parting words you'd like to say to our listeners out there, all these lawyers that listen to this podcast?
I would say if I could teach anything at all or get anybody to understand is that being a leader is not telling people what to do. It's trusting people to get out there and do what they need to do to be leaders themselves, because that's what you want is a law firm built with a bunch of leaders. And I think there again, I keep coming back to out of change, you may have chaos, and out of chaos comes change, but you will never, ever grow your firm like you did until you're willing to change. And you've got to be willing to change. So I guess my advice would be, are you willing to change? And if so, do you change in the right direction?
Yeah.
And it's that simple.
Yeah.
I'm a planner, but in the end, it's all about change. Are you willing to change?
Well, listen, I just want to publicly, I've done it before, but I'll do it again. Thank you for all that you did for me and helping me grow that law firm, and all the management stuff you and Dave taught me is invaluable. I mean, it's helped me get to where I'm at today. Because I always had a knack for marketing. I mean, that was my love, but marketing alone will not do it. You got to know how to manage, and you got to know best practices and all this stuff, and you got to have both. You got to have the infrastructure to handle it.
Well, I appreciate that, Ken. I had believe it or not, I had a lot of fun with your firm. I grew so much during that time I was with you. I would hope that you would let me tell one Ken story. Do you mind?
Yeah, sure.
I had been with your firm, I don't know, first year or so, and every week you would grab the lawyers and you would go to Raleigh. We were in Dunn. And I'd think, well, crap, why can't I go? But you never asked, and I never said anything. And one day you came in and you said, how would you like to go to Raleigh with whoever we were going? I think Greg at that time and that. I said, wow, they're finally asking me to go have fun. Well, what I found out was you didn't take me along to have fun. I became your designated driver.
Yeah.
You guys partied till you couldn't walk and left me in Raleigh with a bunch of inebriated lawyers, and I had no idea where Dunn was. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to? I don't think I ever forgave you for that. So you owe me a night out sometime.
All right. I love it. I forgot about that. That's cool.
But anyhow, thank you so much, Ken, for what you've done for Dave and I too. We've been very fortunate over these 50 years to have you in our life. There's no doubt about that.
Same here. All right. Well, take care, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.